Welcome all to the very first, hopefully not the last, MediaStrong Symposium. And today we're going to talk about newsroom mental health. And I'm Leona from Ulster University. I've got my name up there in case I forget it. And I fully realise that this is a taboo subject in something that's not often talked about in newsrooms. I invited a lot of newsrooms here today, and I suppose the fact that there's some of them, a lot of them are not here, maybe tells you that it's still a very taboo subject. It's something that has a lot of shame and fear attached to it. It's something that is more often ignored than faced. And the reason that why some journalists burn out and break and leave the profession. So why am I talking about newsroom mental health? I suppose much like an annoying reformed smoker, I don't know if we know any of them, who constantly goes on and on about the benefits of stopping smoking. I quit the newsroom in the same manner someone quit cigarettes. And I left the newsroom bubble, and I was afforded the space to look at it from outside eyes. And what I saw was just not pretty at all from what I saw from outside. Excuse me. The newsroom is a very macho place. It's a place where there is no room for weakness. We use language like tough and hard-nosed and resilient to describe our media workers. We send them into the worst situations imaginable, ones revolving around tragedy or hostility or awful things that happen to other human beings. And we expect them to go in there and find and record every single detail about that awfulness. We expect them to sit with the bereaved and the bereft and absorb trauma and all the things that revolve around those awful, awful stories. And we expect them to come out as if they're somehow superhuman, that they don't have human feelings, that they're not capable of reacting to whatever it is that's in front of them, whatever trauma is in front of them, that they're immune to normal human reactions and to awfulness and tragedy. And then we do that. And then we bring them into newsrooms, back into these newsrooms where, regardless of HR provision, the concrete traditional newsroom mindset is that journalists who show something has impacted on them are weak and that they're not up to the job. So journalists tend to stay quiet. They tend to kind of hide away the things that impact on them. They don't seek help, even if it is available in their newsrooms. They go on to the next story and they absorb the next awfulness until their cup overflows, and whatever reaction, some of them leave, some of them break, some of them have breakdowns, some of them lean on alcohol and drugs as for crutches. So a lot of these things happen when things like that happen. Because the newsroom mindset dictates that we are tough and we are hard-nosed and we are resilient and we have to stay like that. And I was in this newsroom bubble for 24 years. I worked in local newspapers and dailies as well. I'm a field producer. I still am a field producer for international news companies. And I've seen very many things in my job, as other journalists here would have seen as well. And some of those things just completely broke me as a human being. But when you're in the newsroom, it's very difficult to see that dysfunction. When the adrenaline is pumping and you've got a brilliant front page story, or you've got an exclusive that's just about to break, there is literally no buzz like it, and it just takes over everything. It's like a drug almost, and a lot of journalists describe it as a drug. And then once we get a hit of that, it's a dopamine hit. We strive for the next, and we keep on going. It is a rewarding and exciting and challenging job, and it makes you really feel alive. And that's why I suppose we keep doing it. If it was awful, none of us would do it. But on the flip side of that, a lot of the things that happen in newsrooms are terribly, terribly toxic, but we normalise them because we're in the middle of the circus, we are part of that circus. It happens every day, so it must be normal. But it's not. Newsroom life is a bit of a roller coaster. There are dizzying highs and stomach-churning lows. And Northern Ireland journalists face all of that, as well as another dimension of it, the challenges that normal newsrooms might bring, as well as toxic social media abuse. Northern Ireland, Twitter, social media, all that type of stuff is just crazy. We've got harassment, and then we've also got death threats from paramilitaries. I remember when I was clearing out my desk, when I joined Ulster University and was coming to academia, I was clearing out my desk and I got the usual, 10-year-old notebooks that you would, you're recording stuff on that you probably would never use again. And I came across several booklets from the PSNI, from the Police Service of Northern Ireland, and they're given to journalists or whoever, anybody, that have been given death threats. So I think I had 6 in the drawer, and I had never, to be honest, even looked at them. You go and report, or the police tell you that there's been a threat against you, whatever, and they hand you a piece of paper with the threat on it, and they give you the booklet, and it tells you about how to recognise IEDs, improvised explosive devices, onto your car, or it tells you to take a different route to work in case someone tries to shoot you on the way or what have you. It tells you how to secure your home where your children are living, and your car where your children are driving in with you to school and stuff like that. You know, how do you protect all these things? And I had never read it because I was in this newsroom bubble, and those things don't apply. It's the strangest, most bizarre, surreal thing. I just threw it in a drawer, didn't even think about it. But when you're out of that, and I was looking at it as an academic going, that is not normal. What the hell was I thinking, or what the hell was I doing, sort of, doing this stuff? I've interviewed countless people in the worst days of their lives, and as a reporter, I learned to put up an emotional barrier. All reporters do this when you're entering a home, and just so that the harrowing experience that they're going to tell you about does not land on you. I found myself, I couldn't empathise after a while, and I would try not to relate, because if you related, if you thought this child who has died here is the same age as my son, or he looks like my daughter, or she looks like my daughter, or this person has the same job as my husband, if you relate and you empathise, it hurts. So you just try and get the story and get out, but it's really hard to switch that back on again. That disassociation can really stick around. And if it's not processed, if there's no support network there, if there's nothing that can help you kind of come down, debrief in the newsroom, then that disassociation could stick around, and it's not good. It's not good for your relationships. My friends in the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service would say that journalists are similar to them, that and the other emergency services, that we are often first on scene. We are often on the scene together. We're seeing the same things. And they're dealing obviously with the immediate situation, patching people up, saving lives. We're there mopping up the emotions after that, when the numbness and the shock wears off, and the turmoil and the trauma and the horror and the grief is there revolving around those events. We're there and we're mopping it up whenever we're talking to these people and getting their stories. They tell me, my friends in the ambulance service tell me, that anyone exposed to trauma on a regular basis, which is what journalists and photographers are, they're exposed to trauma every day of the week. They're susceptible to mental health issues, to PTSD. And sometimes everyone else, except journalists and except newsrooms, can see this. It's bizarre to me, and when you're in this bubble, it's almost like you can't see through it. It's hard to recognise the effects of a dysregulated nervous system when you're living it every single day. You think it's normal to switch off your emotions to get the job done. For many, it's normal to drink a bottle of wine to get to sleep. It's normal to fly off the handle at the simplest thing because you're so stressed. It's normal to take drugs or throw yourself into dangerous situations just sometimes to feel something. It's normal not to be able to switch off or find it hard to relax. It's all normal. It's just the newsroom normal. That's what they'll say. It's just part of the job. Society dehumanises our media workers. They're the enemy of the people. They're liars. They are vultures. But we dehumanise ourselves also. We disregard our health by not recognising that the job can take its toll. And we disregard ourselves by not putting in any mitigations in place to cushion the impact of that so that we can be the best as we possibly can as media workers. I've spoken with journalists from across the UK about what would help them. And often it's not something hugely expensive. It's sometimes just recognition. It's something that was tough. That was a tough gig. It's a cup of tea and are you okay? That was a really rough story. It's an email from their bosses asking them if they're good after a particularly grueling story. It's a normalisation of talking about how the grim conveyor belt of doom can get to you and how to look after yourself. It's recognising that you're sending human beings out to tough situations and looking after them when they come back. It's recognition that this is a tough job. It's promoting self-care so that our journalists don't break. And this is not a new thing, by the way. We're not reinventing the wheel here. A lot of professions who deal with traumatic incidents and trauma on a regular basis have mitigations in place, and some of the folks are going to talk about them here today, to help their staff to deal with what they experience. Paramedics, counsellors, police officers, doctors. It doesn't stop anyone from doing their job. Putting these mitigations in place doesn't stop anyone from doing a brilliant job. It just helps them to do the best job that they can, as safely as they can, for as long as they can. The newsroom mindset dictates that journalists and media workers are somehow immune to the trauma that we often experience. It's in the job. That is just, it's outdated. It belongs to the dinosaurs and it needs to change. We need to normalise talking about mental health and well-being in the newsroom. We need to consider it just as we would physical safety. Are you going out to a job? Okay, do you need a flak jacket? Do you need a helmet? Also, the psychological safety there is just as important. A whole host of people have come to Belfast today from across the UK and to join in the conversation about newsroom mental health. They have researched the issue, they have talked to hundreds of journalists the world over. They have ideas and they have answers that can be tailored to any newsroom to help journalists thrive. So Hannah Storm, here at the front, is the founder of Headlines Network, a network for those who care about improving mental health in the media. She'll speak about the shame and stigma revolved around showing vulnerability in the newsroom and how her own experiences led her to set up Headlines Network with a mission to normalise conversations around mental health. Professor Nicola Doherty is the lead psychologist in the Regional Trauma Network. She will join Dr. Mary Dooher, clinical psychologist, at the Western Trust, to talk about how the lessons learned in healthcare, especially during COVID, can be applied to newsrooms, and about an exciting new newsroom programme that we are developing together and that you can feed into and help to shape. We'll have a media workers panel of Claire Allen from the Derry Journal, a very well-known author as well, David Blevins from Sky News, Josh Minka over here from the BBC, Trish Devlin from Sunday World, Chris Lindsay was to be here from the BBC but he's lost his voice, so he's not going to be here, and myself talking about our experiences in the newsroom and how we think things should change. Dr. Maya Simonjak from Middlesex University will lean on her most recent research to consider the improvements that newsrooms can make to create more supportive environments for their journalists. And finally, psychotherapist James Scurry from Sky News and Safely Held Spaces will speak about how the issue of newsroom mental health is a really contentious area and how trauma can impact on journalists. So I hope you will leave here today, or if you're watching online, that you will get a better understanding of the challenges that journalists and media workers face and ideas on how we can mitigate those together so that we can all remain media strong. Thank you very much.